Please don't do this. The pastor's hand trembled. The knife drew blood. Min-jae had survived 10 years in the Korean underworld, but he never thought he'd die at the hands of the woman he love's father. My daughter trusted you, Pastor Okonkwo whispered in Yoruba-accented English. She saved your life, and you repaid her by bringing death to our doorstep. Min-jae wanted to explain, wanted to tell him the truth, but the syndicate's men were already surrounding the brownstone. And if he didn't choose right now, Mariam or his loyalty, someone was going to die tonight. This is the story of how a Korean enforcer's love for a Nigerian doctor started a war between two worlds, a war that would cost blood, sacrifice everything, and prove that some love stories don't have happy endings, they have survivors. If you're already hooked, do me a favor right now. Hit that subscribe button for Afro Korean Veil, because we tell the most intense cross-cultural love stories you'll ever hear. Smash that like button so I know you're here for this emotional journey. And drop a comment telling me, have you ever loved someone your family hated? Would you risk everything for love? Let me know, because Mariam and Min-jae's story is about to break your heart and put it back together. But before we get to how Min-jae ended up with a knife to his throat in a Brooklyn brownstone, we need to go back. Back to where this impossible love story began. Back to the moment everything changed. 4 months earlier. Manhattan. 2:30 in the morning. Min-jae never imagined that getting stabbed would lead him to the love of his life. He was 29. An enforcer for a Korean organized crime syndicate operating out of Koreatown in Manhattan, sent to New York from Seoul 3 years ago to handle problems. That night, a deal went wrong in Harlem, and Min-jae took a knife to the ribs protecting his boss's son. His men dragged him to Mount Sinai Hospital's emergency room and disappeared before the cops could ask questions. Blood soaked through his designer suit. His vision blurred. Pain screamed through every nerve. He was dying. And he knew it. That's where he met her. Dr. Mariam Okonkwo, 26, Nigerian American, second-generation immigrant, daughter of a strict Yoruba pastor who expected her to marry a nice Nigerian accountant, not save the life of a bleeding Korean gangster at 2 in the morning. She was in her second year of residency, exhausted from a double shift, her natural hair pulled back in a puff, her brown eyes sharp and intelligent behind her glasses. Stab wound to the lower right torso, the paramedic said, wheeling Min-jae through the automatic doors. Patient is combative, refuses to give name, no ID. Mariam looked down at Min-jae on the gurney. His face pale, his designer suit soaked in blood, his eyes fighting to stay focused. Even bleeding out, he was the most beautiful man she'd ever seen. Dangerous. That was her first thought. This man is dangerous. Sir, I need you to tell me if you're allergic to any medications, she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Min-jae responded in Korean, delirious, his words slurred and desperate. She tried again in English. Nothing. Just more Korean, more desperation. Then, frustrated, she leaned close to his face. If you die because you won't talk to me, that's on you. Something about her voice, her no-nonsense attitude, the way she looked at him like he was a person and not a criminal, made Min-jae switch to broken English. No allergies. Please don't call police. Her eyes narrowed. I'm legally required to report stab wounds. Please. He grabbed her hand, his grip weak but desperate. They'll kill me, not police. The people who did this. If police come, I'm dead. Mariam looked at his face, really looked, and saw genuine terror beneath the tough exterior. She saw a man who'd lived with violence so long, it had become normal. She saw someone dying, not just physically, but spiritually, and she made a decision that would change her life forever. I'll delay the report, she said quietly, but you owe me the truth when you wake up. She saved his life that night. 6 hours of surgery, 47 stitches, 2 pints of blood. Her attending physician questioned why she was so invested in a John Doe with obvious gang affiliations. She lied and said all patients deserved equal care. But the truth was, something about Min-jae's eyes haunted her, the way he'd looked at her, not with the entitled demands of most men, but with genuine vulnerability, like she was the last good thing he'd ever see. When Min-jae woke up the next afternoon, she was sitting beside his bed, reading a chart, and he thought she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Not just physically, though she was stunning, but the way she carried herself, confident, intelligent, kind, despite working in a system that tried to crush kindness out of people. "You stayed," he said in careful English, his Korean accent thick. "I wanted to make sure you didn't die just to spite me." She set down the chart. "Now talk. Who stabbed you, and why shouldn't I call the police?" So he told her a version of the truth. That he worked for a Korean businessman who had enemies. That the stabbing was business-related. That involving the police would make things worse for everyone, not better. He didn't tell her about the drugs, the money laundering, the violence he'd committed with his own hands. Not yet. Some truths you saved for when people were ready to hear them. "You're lying," Mariam said flatly. "But I can tell you're not going to tell me the whole truth. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay in this hospital for 3 days under observation. You're going to take your antibiotics. You're going to let me check your wound twice a day. And then you're going to walk away and never come back to my ER. Deal?" "What if I want to come back?" The words surprised him as much as her. She raised an eyebrow. "To get stabbed again? I don't recommend it." "To see you again." Mariam laughed, sharp and disbelieving. "You don't even know me." "Then let me." Min-jae sat up despite the pain screaming through his ribs. "One coffee. One conversation. Let me thank you properly for saving my life. I'm a doctor. Saving lives is literally my job. Please." His Korean accent made the words sound heavier, more desperate. "I won't bother you again if you say no, but I have to try." Something in his eyes, some vulnerability that didn't match the expensive suit and the violence he clearly lived with, made Mariam pause. Her entire life, she'd been the good Nigerian daughter. Made all the right choices. Dated the right men, the safe men, the boring men her father approved of. And she was so tired of being good. "One coffee," she said. "That's it. And if you try anything, I know exactly where to stick a needle to make it hurt." Min-jae smiled for the first time, and it transformed his entire face. "I believe you." But one coffee turned into something neither of them expected. It turned into the beginning of a war. That one coffee turned into 2, then dinner, then late-night texts when she got off shift, and he was handling business he still wouldn't explain. Min-jae learned that Mariam was brilliant, driven, passionate about medicine, and deeply connected to her Nigerian culture. She taught him about jollof rice, about Yoruba proverbs her father quoted constantly, about growing up caught between 2 worlds, Nigerian at home, American everywhere else, about the pressure to be perfect, to represent her entire culture to white colleagues who saw her as exotic or aggressive depending on the day. Mariam learned that Min-jae was dangerous, damaged, and desperately trying to be someone different when he was with her. He told her about growing up in Seoul in a single-parent home after his father died, about his mother working 3 jobs to keep them fed, about falling into gang life at 16, because it was the only family that wanted him, the only place where being good at violence was considered valuable. He didn't tell her the worst parts yet. Not about the man he'd killed in self-defense at 19. Not about the bones he'd broken collecting debts. Not about how deep into the darkness he'd fallen before he couldn't see light anymore. 3 weeks after that first coffee, they were walking through Central Park at midnight, his hand carefully not touching hers, even though they both wanted it to. The city glowed around them, alive and indifferent to their impossible situation. Why are you really in New York? Mariam asked, stopping beneath a streetlight that made her skin glow like bronze. Min-jae was quiet for a long time. He watched a couple walk past holding hands, laughing about something ordinary, and felt a sharp pain of envy. In Korea, I did things I'm not proud of. Bad things. Violent things. My boss sent me here to start fresh, to run cleaner operations. But the darkness follows you, Mariam. It doesn't matter how many miles you travel. I'm trying to be better, but I don't know if I can. What kind of things? Her voice was careful, measured. The doctor in her cataloguing symptoms of deeper trauma. Things that would make you run if I told you. Try me. He stopped walking, turned to look at her directly. The streetlight cast shadows across his face, making him look both younger and infinitely older. I hurt people for money. I collected debts through fear. I was good at it, because I didn't feel anything anymore. Until I met you. Now I feel everything, and it's terrifying. You make me want to be someone I'm not sure exists anymore. Mariam should have walked away. Every rational part of her brain screamed to run. This was exactly the kind of man her father warned her about. The kind who brought chaos and danger into stable lives. But she'd seen the way he looked at children in the park with longing. Like he wanted a life he didn't think he deserved. She'd noticed how he always walked on the street side of the sidewalk to protect her from traffic. She'd caught him leaving enormous tips for immigrant workers at restaurants, speaking to them in broken Spanish or Mandarin, treating them with a respect he didn't show anyone else. There was goodness buried under the violence, and she couldn't stop digging for it. I'm not running, she said quietly. But I need honesty. Complete honesty. If we're doing this, whatever this is, I need to know what I'm getting into. No more half-truths. So over the next weeks, Min-jae told her everything. The full truth about his criminal work, about the syndicate's operations in New York, about the blood on his hands that no amount of soap could wash away. He told her about the nightmares, about waking up at 3 a.m. convinced he was back in Seoul with his father's ghost watching him become exactly what the old man had feared. He told her about the guilt that ate him alive, about wanting to leave, but not knowing how, about being trapped in a life he'd chosen at 16, when he was too young and too desperate to understand what he was choosing. He expected her to be disgusted, expected her to finally see him for what he was, a monster in expensive clothes. Instead, she held his hand across the table in the tiny Korean restaurant where they'd met for dinner, and said, "You're not your worst choices. You're what you choose to be from this moment forward." That's when he knew he loved her. That's when he knew he'd burn his whole life down if it meant keeping her. That's when everything got impossibly complicated. Because loving Mariam meant facing her world, and her world was deeply Nigerian, deeply Christian, and deeply opposed to everything Min-jae represented. Her father, Pastor Emmanuel Okonkwo, ran a Nigerian church in Brooklyn with 200 members. Her mother was a traditional Yoruba woman who barely spoke English and had very specific ideas about who her daughter should marry. Ideas that absolutely did not include Korean gangsters. Her 3 brothers were protective to the point of violence, the kind of men who believed their sister's honor was their responsibility to guard. And Min-jae was Korean, non-Christian, and involved in organized crime. 3 strikes before he even walked in the door. "I want to meet your family," Min-jae said one night after they'd been dating for 2 months, sitting in his apartment in Koreatown while she studied for her medical boards. Mariam nearly choked on her wine. "Absolutely not." "Why?" "Because my father will literally try to exorcise you. Because my mother will ask when you're converting to Christianity and what Korean dowry customs are. Because my brothers will run a background check and find out about your life, and then they'll try to fight you. And honestly, I don't know who would win that fight, and I don't want to find out. I can handle it." "Min-jae, you don't understand. Nigerian families aren't like Korean families. We're loud, we're invasive, we argue about everything, and my father has very strong opinions about who I date. He already doesn't approve of the fact that I'm 26 and unmarried. He thinks I'm being too picky, too American, too modern. If I bring home a Korean gangster, he might actually have a heart attack. Then let me prove I'm worthy of you. You're not listening. You're not Nigerian. You're not Christian. You're involved in crime. That's 3 strikes before you even walk in the door. There's no proving anything. You're disqualified by default. Min Jae took her hands, his grip gentle but firm. I love you, Mariam. I should have said it weeks ago. I love your mind, your strength, your kindness, the way you see the best in people, even when they don't deserve it. I love how you yell at the TV during Nigerian movies, and how you explain every Yoruba word to me like I'm 5 years old. I love how you pray before meals, even though you know I don't believe, because it matters to you. I love you, and I'm not hiding anymore. If your family is important to you, then meeting them is important to me. I want them to know I exist. I want them to know I'm serious about you. Mariam stared at him, tears filling her eyes. You what? I love you. You're insane. This is going to be a disaster. Then we'll survive it together. She kissed him then, desperately, like she could pour all her fear and hope into that one moment. Okay, I'll set it up. But don't say I didn't warn you. My family is a lot. I survived the Korean underworld. How bad can one Nigerian family be? Mariam laughed, but it sounded like crying. So much worse. You have no idea. The dinner happened 2 weeks later at her parents' brownstone in Brooklyn. Min Jae wore his most conservative suit, brought expensive gifts, French wine for her father, designer scarf for her mother, craft whiskey for her brothers. He'd practiced Yoruba greetings with Mariam for days, stumbling over the tonal pronunciation until she laughed so hard she cried. He was prepared for resistance. He was prepared for questions. He was prepared for cultural differences. He wasn't prepared for her father to open the door, look him up and down with eyes that saw everything, and say in English, heavy with Yoruba accent, "Korean gangster! My daughter thinks I'm stupid." Min Jae's blood ran cold. Sir, I know who you are. I know what you do. I'm a pastor in New York City, boy. I hear things. My congregation includes police officers, social workers, nurses who work in every hospital in this city. You think I don't know about the Korean enforcer who got stabbed in Harlem 4 months ago? You think I don't know my daughter broke protocol to save him? You think I don't know she's been sneaking around with a criminal? Pastor Okonkwo's voice was quiet but deadly, the kind of calm that preceded violence. You have 3 seconds to leave my home before I call the police and tell them about the stabbing my daughter treated that she never reported. 1. Baba, please. Mariam appeared behind her father, her face stricken. Inside, now. Her father's tone left no room for argument. Mariam looked at Min Jae with apology and fear, then disappeared inside. The door slammed in Min Jae's face so hard the frame shook. He stood there on the brownstone steps, humiliated, angry, and terrified that he'd just lost the only good thing in his life. Around him, Brooklyn continued its evening routine. Families walked past. Cars honked. Someone was playing Afro beats from an open window. The world moved on, indifferent to his heartbreak. His phone buzzed. A text from Mariam. I'm so sorry. Give me time to fix this. But time wasn't something they had, because the next day, Min Jae's boss called him in for a meeting, and everything Min Jae had built, everything he'd hoped for, was about to come crashing down. Now let me tell you what happened in that meeting, because this is where Min Jae's 2 worlds, his criminal life and his love for Mariam, collided in a way that would change everything. The old man sat behind a massive desk in Koreatown, his face expressionless, his hands folded like a judge about to deliver a sentence. I hear you're dating someone, a Nigerian doctor. Minjae's stomach dropped. Yes. Unacceptable. You're distracted. Your work is suffering. End it. No. The old man's eyes went cold. I wasn't asking. And I'm not one of your slaves. I do my job. What I do in my personal life is my business. Everything you do is my business. I own you, Minjae. Don't forget that. The old man leaned forward. End it, or I'll end it for you. And trust me, my methods are less gentle than a breakup text. Minjae walked out of that meeting knowing he had a choice to make. The syndicate, or Mariam, his old life, or a chance at something real. That night, he showed, up at the hospital at the end of Mariam's shift, and what he told her would set in motion a series of events that would lead to that knife, that brownstone, that impossible choice between love and survival. They sat in his car in the parking garage while he told her about the meeting, about the threat, about the impossible choice in front of him. I'm leaving the syndicate, he said. I don't know how yet, but I'm done. I can't do this life anymore. Not if I want a real future. Not if I want you. Mariam grabbed his face. Are you insane? You can't just leave. You told me yourself people don't leave these organizations alive. Then I'll be the first. Minjae, listen to me. I've been dead inside for 10 years. You brought me back to life. I'm not giving that up. I'm not giving you up. She kissed him desperately, tears streaming. Promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you won't die trying to be a hero. I promise. He held her like she might disappear. I promise. But promises were hard to keep when Minjae's boss escalated. Suddenly Minjae was being sent on the most dangerous jobs, the ones where people didn't come back. His apartment was searched, his phone was tapped. And worst of all, men started following Mariam. She'd come out of the hospital to find Korean men in suits watching her. She'd get home to her apartment in Harlem to find her door unlocked. Things moved. A clear message. We can get to you anytime. He's trying to scare you away from me, Minjae said when she told him. It's working, isn't it? I'm terrified, Mariam admitted. But I'm not leaving you. You should. I'm poison, Mariam. Everyone I care about gets hurt. Then we'll be hurt together. But the pressure was crushing them. Mariam's father found out about the men following his daughter and showed up at Minjae's apartment with Mariam's 3 brothers. You brought danger to my child, Pastor Okonkwo said, his voice shaking with rage. You selfish, arrogant boy. You think your love is worth her life? I'm trying to protect her. By involving her in gang warfare, by painting a target on her back. One of Mariam's brothers, Chidi, stepped forward. You leave my sister alone, or I swear to God, I'll handle you myself. Try it, Minjae said coldly, his old instincts kicking in. See what happens. Chidi swung. Minjae blocked it easily, but he didn't fight back. He could have destroyed all 3 brothers without breaking a sweat, but these were Mariam's family, so he took the hits. He let them beat him until Pastor Okonkwo pulled his sons back, disgusted. You won't even defend yourself, the pastor said. Pathetic. Minjae spit blood. I won't hurt her family, no matter what you do to me. Something shifted in Pastor Okonkwo's eyes. You really love her. More than my life. Then prove it. Leave New York. Go back to Korea. Let my daughter live in peace. I can't. If I run, they'll kill me. And then they'll kill her for knowing too much. The pastor's face went pale. What have you done to my child? I fell in love with her, and now we're both trapped. The brothers wanted to keep beating him, but Pastor Okonkwo stopped them. This isn't over, Korean boy. You find a way out of this mess, or I find a way to remove you from her life permanently. They left Minjae bleeding on his apartment floor. He texted Mariam. I'm okay. Don't come here. She came anyway, finding him trying to clean blood off his face with shaking hands. Your family hates me, he said. My family doesn't understand you yet. She helped him to the couch, got ice for his face. But they will. How can you be sure? Because I do. I see who you're trying to become. They'll see it too. But understanding came slower than either of them expected. The cultural clashes were constant and exhausting. Pastor Okonkwo couldn't understand why Minjae didn't go to church, why he was so emotionally reserved, why he showed respect through actions instead of words. Mariam's mother kept trying to feed him Nigerian food and was offended when he couldn't handle the spice level. Her brothers saw his quietness as disrespect, his calm as arrogance, his Korean cultural markers as coldness, and Minjae struggled to understand Nigerian family dynamics, the loudness, the constant unsolicited advice, the way Mariam's entire extended family felt entitled to opinions about their relationship. In Korean culture, you kept family business private. In Mariam's Nigerian culture, privacy was interpreted as having something to hide. Why does your aunt feel comfortable asking me how much money I make? Minjae asked after a particularly invasive family gathering. That's just how we are. Family is all up in your business. In Korea, that would be unbelievably rude. Well, you're not in Korea anymore. You're in my world now. The fights escalated. About communication styles, Mariam's direct Nigerian approach versus Minjae's indirect Korean communication. About displays of affection, she wanted him to be more verbally expressive. He showed love through acts of service. About faith, her family's Christianity versus his cultural Buddhism mixed with agnosticism. About the future, she wanted marriage and kids. He wanted to survive next week. I can't be who your family wants, Minjae finally said during one brutal argument. I can't be Nigerian. I can't be Christian. I can't pretend to be something I'm not. I'm not asking you to pretend. I'm asking you to try, to meet them halfway. I am trying. I come to every dinner. I eat food that burns my mouth. I sit through church services in a language I don't understand. I take insults from your brothers with a smile. What more do you want from me? I want you to fight for us, not just physically, but emotionally. I want you to stop acting like loving me is a burden you're carrying alone. It's not a burden. Then why do you look miserable every time we're with my family? Why do you shut down when my father asks you questions? Why can't you just talk to me instead of bottling everything up until you explode? Because that's not how I was raised. In my culture, you don't burden people with your emotions. You handle things quietly. Well, I'm not quiet. I'm Nigerian. We talk about everything. We argue, we cry, we hug it out. That's how we process things. They stood there breathing hard, the cultural divide feeling like the Grand Canyon. I don't know if I can do this, Minjae finally said. I love you, but I don't know if love is enough to bridge how different we are. Mariam's eyes filled with tears. So that's it. You're giving up. I'm being realistic. Your family will never accept me. My world will never let me go. We're fighting battles on every front. And I'm so tired, Mariam. I'm so tired. She walked to the door, paused. My father always says, a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor. Fighting for something doesn't mean it's wrong. It means it's worth it. She looked back at him. I guess I need to know if you think I'm worth fighting for. She left. Minjae sat in his apartment, feeling like he'd just lost the only war that mattered. His phone rang. It was his boss. I hear you're having woman troubles. Good. Maybe now you'll focus on work. I need you in Queens tonight. There's a situation. Minjae almost said no. Almost chose Mariam over the syndicate right then, but old habits die hard, and part of him was still that scared kid who needed the organization's approval. So he went. And that choice almost killed him. The situation in Queens was a setup. Min Jae walked into an abandoned warehouse to find 6 men waiting, including Mariam's brother Chidi. What the hell? Min Jae backed toward the door, but it was blocked. Your boss sent us a message, Chidi said, his face bruised from their previous fight. Said we could have you. Said you were a liability now, distracted by my sister. Said if we removed the problem, everyone would be happier. Min Jae's blood went cold. His own boss had just given permission for Mariam's family to kill him. You're making a mistake. The only mistake was letting you near Mariam in the first place. They attacked. 6 against 1. Min Jae fought like his life depended on it, because it did. He broke bones, drew blood, fought with everything he'd learned in 10 years of violence. But he was outnumbered, and they were motivated by protecting their sister. They beat him until he couldn't stand, until blood filled his mouth, until he was certain he was going to die in this warehouse. Then Chidi pulled out a knife, the same kind of knife that had brought Min Jae to Mariam's hospital months ago. Full circle. I'm going to make sure you never touch my sister again. He raised the knife. Min Jae closed his eyes. Ready. Almost relieved. Then a voice screamed, "Stop!" Everyone turned. Mariam stood in the warehouse entrance, her father beside her, her face horrified. What are you doing? Protecting you, Chidi said, like we should have from the beginning. By murdering him. Mariam's voice was shaking with fury. In God's name, Chidi, what is wrong with you? He's a gangster. He's dangerous. He's ruining your life. He's the man I love. Mariam ran to Min Jae, falling to her knees beside his broken body. Oh God, Min Jae, stay with me. Pastor Okonkwo looked at his sons with disappointment, deeper than anger. You've become the very thing we fight against. Violence, revenge, hatred. He turned to Min Jae. Can you stand, son? Min Jae struggled to his feet with Mariam's help, every inch agony. How did you find me? Your boss called me, Pastor Okonkwo said. Wanted to make sure I knew where to find you. Wanted me to know he'd sanctioned your death. The pastor's eyes were hard. That man thought he could manipulate me into doing his dirty work. He was wrong. Why did you come? Min Jae asked through broken ribs. Because my daughter begged me to save your life. Because she loves you enough to fight her entire family for you. Because I'm a man of God, and God doesn't approve of murder, no matter how much I might dislike my daughter's choice in men. Mariam helped Min Jae out of the warehouse, her brothers standing there ashamed and confused. In the car ride to the hospital, back to where this all started, Pastor Okonkwo drove while Mariam held Min Jae's bleeding head in her lap. You're going to have to decide, the pastor said quietly. My daughter or your criminal life. You can't have both. I choose her, Min Jae said immediately through swollen lips. I've chosen her every day since I met her. Then prove it. Leave the syndicate. Start over. Clean slate. They'll kill me for leaving. Then we protect you. Nigerian community, Korean community, everyone who believes in second chances. But you have to want it bad enough to risk everything. Min Jae looked up at Mariam, her face streaked with tears, her hands gentle in his hair. I want it. I want her. I want a life that doesn't end in violence. Then we fight, Pastor Okonkwo said. Together. The next weeks were warfare of a different kind. Min Jae formally left the syndicate, which meant threats, attempts on his life, and constant fear. But Pastor Okonkwo was true to his word. He mobilized his church, other Nigerian families in Brooklyn, and even reached out to Korean community leaders who were tired of organized crime giving all Koreans a bad name. They created a network of protection, safe houses, and support. Min Jae also reached out to the FBI. He had information, evidence of trafficking, money laundering, violence. He could bury his old boss if he wanted revenge, but revenge wasn't what he wanted anymore. He wanted freedom, so he made a deal. Testimony in exchange for witness protection for him and Mariam. We'll have to leave New York, the FBI agent explained. New identities, new city, start completely, over. Mariam held Min Jae's hand. Where will we go? There's a program in Atlanta, large Nigerian community, growing Korean population. You could finish your residency there. He could start legitimate work. What about my family? Mariam's voice broke. They can know you're safe, but not where you are, for their protection and yours. It was the hardest decision Mariam ever made. Leave her family, her community, her entire life to protect the man she loved. But when she looked at Min Jae, saw the hope in his eyes, the possibility of an actual future, she knew her answer. We go together, she said. The day before they left New York, Pastor Okonkwo held a private blessing ceremony in his church. Just family, no congregation. He stood before Min Jae and Mariam, his face still conflicted but softer than before. I don't understand your love, he admitted. Korean and Nigerian, Christian and not. My daughter and a man from a world I despise. But I've watched you fight for each other. I've watched you sacrifice. And I've come to believe that God puts people in our lives for a reason. He placed his hands on both their heads. I bless this union. I bless this difficult, complicated, cross-cultural love. May you build something beautiful from the ashes of everything you've survived. May you honor both your cultures, learn from your differences, and create a family that represents the best of both worlds. Mariam cried through the entire ceremony. Min Jae stood there with tears streaming down his face, understanding maybe 30% of the Yoruba prayers, but feeling every word in his soul. Her mother gave them traditional Nigerian wedding cloth, even though they weren't officially married yet. Her brothers apologized, awkwardly, in the way Nigerian men apologize, through actions, not words, giving Min Jae a handshake that turned into a hug. You hurt our sister, and witness protection won't save you, Chidi said. Min Jae smiled through his tears. I know. They left for Atlanta the next morning, everything they owned in 2 suitcases, starting over with new names and new lives. The FBI provided a modest apartment in Decatur, a suburb with significant African and Asian immigrant populations. Mariam transferred her residency to Emory. Min Jae got a job as a translator for international businesses, using his Korean and English skills legitimately for the first time in his life. It wasn't easy. The trauma didn't disappear overnight. Min Jae had nightmares about his old life, panic attacks in grocery stores, when he saw Korean men in suits. Mariam struggled with being cut off from her family. With only weekly phone calls to her father to confirm they were alive, they went to therapy, individually and together, learning to process violence and fear and impossible choices. And they still fought about cultural differences, about Min Jae's emotional distance that frustrated Mariam's Nigerian need for verbal affirmation, about Mariam's family's constant involvement, even from a distance, versus Min Jae's Korean independence, about how to blend their cultures if they had children. Would they be raised Christian, or Buddhist, or both, or neither? Would they speak Korean, or Yoruba, or English, or all three? I want our kids to know both worlds, Mariam said one night as they lay in bed in their small Atlanta apartment. I want them to eat jollof rice and kimchi. I want them to understand that they come from 2 strong, beautiful cultures. I want that too, Min Jae said carefully. But I also want them to be free to choose who they are, not trapped by either culture's expectations. Is that what you feel? Trapped by my culture? Sometimes. When your father calls and immediately asks why we're not married in a church yet. When your mother sends messages about converting. When your aunties ask about grandchildren like it's their business. In Korean culture, we don't. I know, you don't talk about it. You keep it private. But Min Jae, that's my family showing love. That's involvement, not intrusion. it feels like judgment. And your silence feels like you don't care. They stared at each other across the bed, the gap between their cultures feeling vast, even in the intimacy of their shared space. How do we fix this? Mariam finally asked. We keep trying. We keep explaining. We keep choosing each other even when it's hard. Is it always going to be this hard? Minjae pulled her close. Probably. But I'd rather fight these battles with you than live peacefully with anyone else. 1 year after arriving in Atlanta, Minjae took Mariam to a Korean-Nigerian fusion restaurant run by an interracial couple, and there, surrounded by the blend of their two worlds, he got down on one knee. I don't have much, he said in English, still accented with Korean. I can't give you a huge wedding, or a big house, or the life you might have had with someone easier. But I can promise that I will spend every day learning your language, your culture, your heart. I will learn to be loud when you need loud, and quiet when you need quiet. I will eat jollof rice even though it's too spicy, and you will eat kimchi even though it's too fermented. I will let your family be involved because that's how you show love, and you will give me space because that's how I process. We'll fight and make up and fight again, but we'll never give up. Marry me, Mariam. Officially. Legally. Forever. She was crying too hard to speak, so she just nodded and kissed him in front of everyone in the restaurant. Nigerian customers cheering and Korean customers clapping politely. This perfect blend of their two worlds, celebrating their imperfect perfect love. They got married 3 months later. Pastor Okonkwo flew to Atlanta to officiate, and Mariam's mother and brothers came despite the FBI's warnings. Minjae's mother flew in from Seoul, tiny and nervous, and speaking no English, crying through the entire ceremony. They had a Christian ceremony and a traditional Korean ceremony and a Nigerian reception, where everyone learned that you can't do a Korean bow in traditional Yoruba clothing without falling over. This is chaos, Minjae said to Mariam as they watched their families try to communicate through Google Translate and hand gestures. This is love, Mariam corrected. Messy, complicated, cross-cultural love. 2 years later, Mariam gave birth to their daughter in the same hospital where she'd finished her residency. They named her Amara Minseo, Grace in Igbo, beautiful in Korean. When Minjae held her for the first time, he cried so hard the nurses got concerned. I'm sorry, he kept saying in Korean. I'm sorry you got such a broken father. Stop apologizing, Mariam said from the hospital bed, exhausted and beautiful. She got a father who fights for his family, who chose love over violence, who crosses oceans of difference every day to meet me halfway. That's not broken, that's brave. Pastor Okonkwo and Minjae's mother stood on opposite sides of the hospital room, these two people from completely different worlds, and cooed at the baby in their own languages. She's perfect, the pastor said. Minjae's mother said something in Korean. Pastor Okonkwo looked at Minjae. Translation. She says Amara looks like she belongs to the whole world, not just one place. Pastor Okonkwo smiled. Tell your mother she's absolutely right. 5 years after that night in the Manhattan hospital, Minjae and Mariam sat on their Atlanta apartment balcony, watching the sunset. Amara inside, watching cartoons in 3 languages. Minjae had just gotten promoted at his translation company. Mariam had been offered an attending physician position. They'd survived the impossible. Do you ever regret it? Mariam asked suddenly. Choosing me, leaving everything behind? Minjae thought about the violence, the nightmares that still woke him sometimes, the family he'd lost, the culture he'd left. But he also thought about Amara's laugh, about Mariam's hand in his every morning, about building something real from nothing. Not for a second, he said. You. Choosing you was the scariest thing I've ever done, Mariam admitted. Leaving my family, risking everything, fighting everyone. but I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Because you taught me that love isn't about easy. It's about choosing someone every single day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Min Jae kissed her as the Atlanta lights flickered on below them, and he felt complete. They'd survived attempted murder, cultural warfare, and impossible odds. A Korean enforcer and a Nigerian doctor. An Afro Korean love story that shouldn't have worked but did, because real love doesn't bow to family expectations, cultural barriers, or the violence of the past. It just is. Stubborn and fierce, and absolutely unbreakable. As Amara called out for them in her beautiful mixed accent, "Appa, Mommy," Min Jae smiled. This was his family. Complicated, cross-cultural, forged in blood, and sealed with impossible choices. This was his redemption that once felt unreachable. This was proof that even the most broken people can build something beautiful if they're willing to fight for it. But their story wasn't quite finished. Because 3 years later, on a random Tuesday, Min Jae's past walked through the door of his translation office in the form of his old boss from New York. The man looked older, grayer, diminished somehow. Min Jae's entire body went rigid with fear and old instincts. "How did you find me?" "I didn't," the old man said in Korean, sitting down uninvited. "The FBI did. They arrested me 6 months ago. I made a deal, gave them everyone above me. I'm in witness protection now too. They thought it would be funny to relocate me to Atlanta. Universe has a sick sense of humor. What do you want?" Min Jae's hand was on his phone, ready to call for help. "Peace." The old man looked broken. "I came to apologize. I tried to have you killed because you chose love over loyalty. But sitting in a cell for 6 months, watching my own family abandon me, I realized you were the smart one. You got out while you still had a soul left. I waited too long." Min Jae didn't know what to say. This man had terrorized him, had threatened Mariam, had tried to destroy everything. "I don't forgive you." "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking you to learn from my mistakes. Don't let the past destroy what you've built. I did that. I let pride and tradition and loyalty to a corrupt system ruin every good thing I ever had. You escaped. Stay escaped." The old man stood, bowed deeply in the Korean way, and walked out. Min Jae sat there shaking, processing, then called Mariam. "You won't believe who just showed up." That night, they talked about forgiveness, about whether people truly change, about how to protect Amara from a past that kept trying to surface. "Do you think he's really different?" Mariam asked. "I don't know, but I know I'm different. The man I was when we met would have killed him for showing up. The man I am now just wants him to leave us alone." "Growth," Mariam said, kissing his forehead. "That's what happens when you choose love over violence every single day." 6 months later, Min Jae and Mariam received an invitation that shocked them both. Pastor Okonkwo was retiring from his Brooklyn church and wanted to do one final ceremony, a formal blessing and vow renewal for interracial couples in his congregation who'd faced opposition. "He wants to celebrate the marriages he once fought against," Mariam explained, reading her father's letter, "including ours." They flew to Brooklyn with 6-year-old Amara, who was equal parts terrified and excited to meet the legendary grandfather she only knew from video calls. The church was packed with couples of every combination: Nigerian Korean, Nigerian white, Nigerian Latino, Korean black, every beautiful blend imaginable. And Pastor Okonkwo stood at the pulpit with tears in his eyes. "I spent 40 years of ministry teaching that marriage should be within our culture, within our faith, within our understanding," he began in English, then Yoruba, then waiting for Korean translation. "I was wrong, not about faith, not about God, but about who gets to define what a godly marriage looks like. These couples taught me that love is bigger than my understanding. that God works through every culture, every color, every language. He looked directly at Mariam and Minjai. My daughter and son-in-law taught me that the strength of a marriage isn't in how easy it is, but in how willing both people are to fight for it. They've fought cultural barriers, language differences, my stubbornness, criminal organizations, and geography. And they're still standing, still choosing each other, still building a family that represents the best of both worlds. During the vow renewal, Minjai spoke in English and Korean, while Mariam translated to Yoruba, this beautiful linguistic dance that represented their entire relationship. I promise to keep learning your language even when it's hard, Minjai said. To keep eating jollof rice, even though I still can't handle the pepper. To let your family be loud and involved, because that's how you show love. To raise our daughter to be proud of both her cultures, not trapped by either. Mariam responded, I promise to respect your need for quiet when you're processing. To not take your silence as lack of love. To learn that I made you soup means I love you in Korean. To teach our daughter that strength comes in many forms. Nigerian loudness and Korean restraint. My directness and your thoughtfulness. When they kissed, Amara stood between them, holding both their hands, this perfect representation of two worlds merged into one beautiful child. The church erupted in celebration. Nigerian ululation mixing with Korean applause, the sound of cultures colliding in the best possible way. That night, back at Pastor Okonkwo's brownstone, Minjai's mother and Mariam's mother sat in the kitchen attempting to cook together, despite speaking maybe 10 words of common language between them. Through hand gestures and Google Translate, and Amara's surprisingly good translation skills, they made kimchi jollof rice, a fusion dish that shouldn't work but somehow tasted like home. Your mother says I'm too skinny, Minjai translated for Mariam as his mother kept piling food on his plate. She thinks you don't feed me enough. Your mother clearly doesn't understand that you eat like a bird because Korean portions are tiny, Mariam shot back, laughing. Tell her Nigerian portions will give you a heart attack. The mothers started arguing in their own languages, neither understanding the other, but both passionately defending their cooking. Amara looked up at her parents. Why are Halmoni and Grandma fighting? They're not fighting, baby, Mariam said. They're bonding. This is what love looks like in our families. Loud, passionate, and usually about food. Pastor Okonkwo raised his glass. To the most complicated, beautiful, frustrating, and inspiring marriage I've ever witnessed. To my daughter who chose the hard path because it was the right path. To my son-in-law who proved that people can change, that violence doesn't define us, that redemption is real. And to my granddaughter, who will grow up knowing that love has no borders, no color lines, no cultural limitations. Later that night, Minjai and Mariam walked through the Brooklyn streets where their story had almost ended in violence. Remember when your brothers tried to kill me in that warehouse? Minjai said. How could I forget? I still have nightmares about it. Your brother Chidi apologized to me today. Actually said the words, I'm sorry, in English. I almost fainted. Mariam laughed. Nigerian men apologizing. That's how you know he really means it. We're not good at saying sorry. We show it through actions. Like Koreans, Minjai realized. Maybe our cultures aren't as different as we thought. Or maybe we've just learned to see the similarities instead of focusing on the differences. They stopped in front of the warehouse where Chidi had held that knife, where Mariam had screamed for them to stop, where their love had almost died. I'm glad we didn't end here, Minjai said quietly. Me too, but I'm also glad we went through it, because now we know nothing can break us. Not family, not culture, not violence, not distance. We survived the worst. Everything else is just details. 10 years after that night in Mount Sinai Hospital, Minjai stood in their Atlanta home, now an actual house with a yard, watching Mariam teach 8-year-old Amara and their 3-year-old son, David, how to make both Nigerian jollof rice and Korean kimchi stew. David had Min-jae's Korean features, but Mariam's Nigerian skin tone, another beautiful blend of their two worlds. Amara was teaching her little brother Korean words, while Mariam taught them both Yoruba phrases. "Appa, come help," Amara called. "David doesn't understand why kimchi is spicy." Min-jae joined them in the kitchen. This man who'd once collected debts through violence, now teaching his children that the only acceptable use of knives was cooking. "In Korea," he explained to David in English, "we believe spicy food builds character. In Nigeria," Mariam interrupted, laughing, "we believe if it's not spicy, why bother eating?" "Your mother and I compromise," Min-jae continued. "Medium spicy. Not too much, not too little." "Like everything in this house," Amara said wisely, far too wise for 8 years old. "Korean and Nigerian. Loud and quiet. Church on Sunday, Korean temple for holidays. We're medium everything." Min-jae and Mariam looked at each other and burst out laughing. "She's not wrong," Mariam admitted. That night, after the kids were asleep, Min-jae found an old photo on his phone from that first night in the hospital. He barely recognized the man in that photo. Hard, cold, dying inside. "Look at this," he showed Mariam. She took the phone, studied the image. "You look like you were already dead." "I was, until you saved me. And I don't just mean the medical stuff. You saved the person I could have been. The person buried under 10 years of violence. And you saved me from a safe, predictable life that would have killed my soul slowly. My father wanted me to marry Chukwudi Okafor, the accountant's son. Can you imagine?" "Actually, no," Min-jae said, pulling her close. "I can't imagine you with anyone else, even though I know your life would have been easier." "Easier isn't better. Easy is boring. You, Min-jae Park, are many things, but boring isn't one of them." They sat on their couch in their Atlanta home, 10 years and lifetimes away from that Manhattan hospital, and Min-jae felt something he'd never felt in his first 29 years of life. Peace, not the absence of struggle. They still fought about cultural differences, still navigated the complexities of their blended family, still dealt with trauma that surfaced unexpectedly, but peace in knowing that whatever came, they'd face it together. "Do you think our story can help other people?" Mariam asked suddenly. "Other couples fighting families, fighting culture, fighting the whole world to be together." "I don't know. Our story is pretty specific. Korean gangster meets Nigerian doctor in New York. Not exactly common. But the heart of it is choosing love when everyone says you shouldn't. Fighting for someone who's different from you. Building bridges between worlds that don't naturally connect. That's universal." Min-jae thought about his old boss showing up, broken and alone, because he'd chosen violence over everything else. He thought about Pastor Okonkwo's transformation from opponent to supporter. He thought about their children, these perfect blends who would grow up never questioning whether love could cross cultural lines because they were the living proof that it could. "Maybe you're right," he said finally. "Maybe our story isn't just ours. Maybe it belongs to everyone who's ever loved across divides." 15 years after that first meeting, Min-jae and Mariam were invited to speak at a conference about cross-cultural relationships. They stood on stage in front of hundreds of interracial couples, and Mariam spoke first. "People will tell you that love isn't enough, that cultural differences are too big, that family opposition will break you, that you should choose the easier path. And honestly, they're not completely wrong. Love alone isn't enough. You also need commitment, patience, willingness to learn, ability to apologize, strength to fight. And most importantly, you need to choose each other every single day, not just on the easy days." Min-jae continued in his Korean accented English that Mariam found adorable, and he found embarrassing. I came from a world of violence. Mariam came from a world of faith and family. We had nothing in common except that we saw in each other the person we wanted to become. She taught me that strength can be gentle. I taught her that silence can be love. We both taught each other that different doesn't mean wrong. It just means different. They told their story. The stabbing, the family opposition, the attempted murder, the witness protection, the hard years of learning each other's languages and cultures. They were honest about the fights, the misunderstandings, the moments they almost gave up, but they also shared the beauty, the fusion of cultures in their home, their children's multilingual chaos, the way Nigerian jollof rice and Korean kimchi somehow ended up in the same meal. Would we do it again? Mariam asked rhetorically. Knowing everything we'd face, every fight with family, every cultural clash, every moment of feeling like we were fighting the whole world. She looked at Min-jae, who took her hand. Yes, they said together. Every time, without hesitation. The audience erupted in applause, and dozens of couples came up afterward to share their own stories. Nigerian Chinese, Korean Mexican, every combination imaginable. Each one proof that love doesn't recognize borders, that families can be built across cultures, that the hardest choices sometimes lead to the most beautiful destinations. On the flight back to Atlanta, Amara, now 13, looked up from her phone. Mom, Dad, I have a question. What's up, baby? Mariam asked. If you guys had known how hard it would be, would you still have danced together that first night at the club? Min-jae and Mariam looked at each other, having an entire conversation in the silent language they'd developed over 15 years together. Yes, Min-jae said finally. Because the best things in life are worth fighting for. Your mother was worth fighting Korean gangsters, her Nigerian family, the FBI, and my own demons. She's worth every scar. And your father was worth fighting my father's disapproval, cultural expectations, fear of the unknown, and learning to make kimchi even though it smells weird, Mariam added, making everyone laugh. David, now 8, chimed in. Are we worth it? Me and Amara? Both parents pulled their children close. You two are the proof that it was all worth it, Mariam said. You're the reason we fought so hard. So you could grow up in a world where loving someone different isn't controversial. It's just love. 20 years after that first meeting, Min-jae and Mariam sat in their backyard in Atlanta, watching their children, now Amara at 18 heading to college, and David at 13 starting high school, play with their younger cousins visiting from Nigeria and Korea. The yard was chaos, Korean being yelled by Min-jae's nephew, Yoruba being spoken by Mariam's niece, English mixing through it all, K-pop playing on one phone while Afro beats played on another. We did that, Min-jae said quietly. We created this beautiful mess. Best mess I ever made, Mariam agreed. Pastor Okonkwo, now retired and spending half the year in Atlanta helping with grandchildren, walked over. You know what I learned from you two? What, Baba? Mariam asked. That my job as a father wasn't to protect you from difficult choices. It was to teach you how to make them wisely. You chose the hard path, but you chose it with your eyes open. You fought for it. You earned it. And look what you built. He gestured to the chaos of cultures mixing in their backyard. This is what heaven looks like. All tribes, all nations, all languages, together in love. Min-jae's mother, who'd learned enough English to have simple conversations, and enough Yoruba to complement Mariam's cooking, nodded vigorously. Beautiful family, different, but same. Same heart. That night, after everyone left and the house was quiet, Min-jae and Mariam stood in their bedroom, the same room where they'd fought and made up and fought again hundreds of times over 2 decades. I'm tired, Mariam admitted. Me too, but good tired. The kind that comes from building something real. She turned to face him. Min Jae Park, after 20 years, do you still love me? He pulled her close, this woman who'd saved his life in every way that mattered. More than the day I met you, because now I know you. Not just the beautiful doctor who made me want to be better, but the woman who yells at the TV during Nigerian movies, who can't cook Korean food without burning something, who fights for her family like a warrior, who taught me that love is loud and soft, strong and gentle, difficult and absolutely worth every struggle. She kissed him, this kiss carrying 20 years of history, the good, the bad, the impossible, the beautiful. You still taste like that first night, like danger and hope and possibility. And you still taste like salvation. They made love that night like they were still discovering each other, because in many ways they were. 20 years wasn't enough to fully know someone. A lifetime wouldn't be enough. But they had time. They had commitment. They had love that had survived everything the world threw at it. The next morning, Min Jae's phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. Hello? Min Jae, it's Chidi, Mariam's brother. Min Jae braced himself, old instincts kicking in. Is everything okay? Yeah, man. Actually, I'm calling because, well, I'm dating someone Korean, and I'm terrified to tell Dad. I thought maybe you could give me advice on how you survived his disapproval. Min Jae started laughing, couldn't stop. Mariam looked at him confused until he put the phone on speaker. You're dating a Korean woman, and you want my advice? Yeah, because you somehow won over the most stubborn Nigerian father in existence. How did you do it? I didn't, Min Jae said honestly. Your father came around because Mariam never gave up on us, and because I proved through actions, not words, that I was serious. Your father respects commitment, sacrifice, and genuine love. Show him those things. But what if he hates me for choosing someone outside our culture? Then you love her anyway, if she's worth it. If you're willing to fight for her the way I fought for your sister. The way your sister fought for me. Love isn't about easy, Chidi. It's about choosing someone every day, even when it's hard. There was silence on the other end. Then, I'm sorry. For what I did 20 years ago. The warehouse. The knife. I almost killed you because I was too scared and too proud to see that you actually loved my sister. I know. I forgave you years ago. How? I would have killed you. Because holding on to hate was killing me, and because your sister taught me that forgiveness is freedom. For both people. After the call ended, Mariam looked at her husband with tears in her eyes. My brother just apologized to you. Actually apologized with words. And he's dating a Korean woman. The universe has a sense of humor. Or maybe, Min Jae said, pulling her close. We made it easier for the next generation. We fought so they wouldn't have to fight as hard. We broke down walls so they could walk through doors. You think that's our legacy? Making it easier for others. I think our legacy is proof. Proof that love can cross any divide if both people are willing to meet in the middle. Proof that different cultures can not just coexist, but create something more beautiful together. Proof that broken people can build whole families. Proof that even the most impossible love stories can have happy endings. Mariam stood on her toes to kiss him. This man who'd traveled so far from that cold enforcer bleeding in her ER to the warm father and husband he'd become. I love you, Min Jae Park, my savage, my redemption, my home. And I love you, Mariam Okonkwo Park, my savior, my strength, my everything. Outside their window, Atlanta woke up to another day. Inside their home, two people from opposite sides of the world held each other, living proof that the best love stories are the ones people say are impossible, the ones that require fighting family, fighting culture, fighting the entire world, the ones that demand sacrifice and commitment, and choosing each other every single day. Because Min Jae and Mariam's story wasn't just about them, It was about every couple who'd ever loved across divides, every family that had learned to expand their definition of belonging, every child born from two cultures who got to be the bridge instead of being forced to choose a side. Their story was proof that love, real love, doesn't just survive impossible odds, it transforms them into something beautiful. So that's Minjae and Mariam's story. 20 years from a Suzay, Korean gangster bleeding in an ER, to a family that represents the best of two worlds. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me, would you have given Minjae a second chance after learning about his violent past? Could you forgive family members who tried to kill the person you love? What's the biggest cultural difference you think would be hardest to overcome in a relationship? Communication styles, family involvement, or something else? And be honest. Did this story make you cry? Did you see yourself in their struggles? Do you believe that love really can conquer cultural barriers? Or is that just a beautiful lie we tell ourselves? If this story touched your soul, do me a favor. Smash that like button right now. Subscribe to Afro Korean Veil because we have so many more emotional, intense, cross-cultural love stories that will have you feeling all the feelings. Hit that notification bell so you never miss when we drop a new story. And share this video with someone who needs to hear that their impossible love story is possible. Someone who's fighting their family for love. Someone who feels caught between two cultures. Someone who needs hope that different worlds can collide and create something beautiful. Next week's story is even more intense. A Nigerian nurse falls for a Korean chaebol heir, whose family literally owns half of Seoul. You won't want to miss it. Until then, remember, your love story, whatever it looks like, wherever it comes from, whoever told you it was wrong, it's valid, it's beautiful, and it's worth fighting for. Stay blessed, keep loving boldly, and never let anyone tell you that different means impossible. This is Afro Korean Veil, signing off.